and we want to thank you for being with us here for this edition of Our Lives. I'm Gwen Edwards. The disease of addiction is no respecter of person. It strikes the rich and the poor, the well-educated and well-off communities, and those struggling to make ends meet from day to day. More on the fight against addiction from my next two guests. Alan Mathis is the president and CEO of Liberation Programs, which offers drug counseling and drug rehabilitation. And Malcolm Spears is the author of a book entitled Biggie's Chronicles. And Malcolm is also a former client of the Liberation Programs. We want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
Thank you so very much.
All right, now why, Alan, did Liberation Programs decide to team up with Malcolm about the book?
One of the things that we haven't really talked about during this opioid epidemic is that people do get better and that they can lead extremely successful lives. And Malcolm is one of the original graduates from our program, like in 1974 or 73. And he has an amazing story, and he reminds us that life can be good again. And Malcolm's an outstanding person, and so we thought it would be important to tell his story.
And Malcolm, why don't you tell us what motivated you to write the book?
Well, I was inspired by two men that I had a high regard for. The first was the late Dr. Fred Sheftel, who was a co-founder of Liberation Programs in the 70s. And the second was my college professor a year or two later at the University of Southern California, Professor James Wilson. And 2 years apart, they both suggested to me to write a book about my formative experience. At the time, I was in my early 20s, so I was like a deer in headlights. I was like, a book? What, are you kidding? So, but over the years, their words, I was haunted, literally, by their words. And so I took a very humble novice approach, and I would call people to read to them, to get the truth, to get an assessment. Everyone was so encouraging that I continued on. And somewhere around the midway point, I realized that there was really something to what I was doing. I even felt like it was a mandate to share this time, to account for this time and the elements, in addition to my Liberation House experience, growing up in the 1960s and 70s, with all that happened, everything, to give an understanding of an urban perspective of all of those things.
And why don't you tell people where you grew up and a little bit about the book?
Okay, well, I was born in Harlem, in New York City. I grew up here in Stamford, Connecticut. And the book is about growing up in search of a sense of identity, identity and a sense of purpose. Through adolescence, family, puberty, school, the effects of all that was going on during the time, everything from the civil rights movement to Vietnam, all the assassinations, Woodstock, the Mets, I mean, music, from Motown to punk rock, and everything in between. I think that growing up is the toughest thing that we do because there are so many intangibles. It's a chart, it's a course uncharted, and in that there's so many things that occur by which you can't assess in the moment. You have to, at least I had to learn to go beyond and look at the big picture because it's not where you're starting, it's where you're gonna finish.
And let's talk about the book signing very quickly.
The book signing is going to be at the Ferguson Library from 2 to 4 on September 17th. But I want to tell your audience that if you are familiar with the book called Man-Child in the Promised Land,
right,
which is one of the seminal American books about urban life, I love Biggie's Chronicles because it's told from his perspective, but it talks about a young person who falls into a really bad lifestyle, tough lifestyle, where drug addiction is involved. But it shows that with treatment and with good mentors and with lots of perseverance, you can come out through the other side. So this is 40 years later, and Malcolm is a working actor, and he is a motivational speaker, and he inspires me. So it's just a modern day sort of update on Claude Brown's work.
And we want to tell people again, the book signing is Saturday, September the 17th.
Right.
You want to get a copy. You want to be there.
Absolutely. 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.
All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.
And thank you.